I never liked the rain in this city. It did not wash things clean. It only made the rot smell stronger. It seeped through the cracked windows of my apartment and settled deep into my bones. I sat on the floor of the bedroom in the dark. I held Toby against my chest. The walls of the narrow hallway shook. A heavy thud echoed from the front room. Someone was breaking the door. My hands trembled. I pressed them over Toby's small ears to muffle the sound. He slept through the first strike. The second strike splintered the wood. The third tore the lock from the frame. Heavy boots hit the cheap linoleum. Voices filled the small space. They were rough, demanding, angry. I pulled my knees up and tried to make us as small as possible. The suppressants I took earlier kept my scent hidden. I prayed it was enough. It was not. Flashlights swept across the peeling paint of the wall. A man kicked the bedroom door open. He did not ask if anyone was inside. He just walked in. The air in the room changed instantly. The scent of wet wool and cheap tobacco flooded my nose. But beneath that, something else moved in. Something sharper. Something that made my instincts flare with sudden, undeniable terror. An alpha. Not just any alpha. The kind whose presence pulled the oxygen from the air. I looked up. A tall figure stepped through the doorway. His shoulders filled the frame. He wore a dark coat soaked with rain. His face was carved from shadows and sharp angles. His eyes found me on the floor. He did not speak. He did not have to. His pheromones rolled over me like a physical weight. Cedar, dark, heavy cedar wood laced with the bitter trace of something burning. It commanded submission. It demanded silence. My breath caught in my throat. I held Toby tighter. "Where is he?" the man asked. His voice was low. It rumbled in his chest and vibrated against the floorboards. I swallowed hard. He is not here. I hated how small my voice sounded. I hated the way my pulse hammered against my ribs. Ryan left 3 months ago. I do not know where he went. One of the other men laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "He took our money, Omega. That means you owe us. You and the brat." I closed my eyes. The familiar sting of panic rose in my chest. Ryan had ruined my life, and now he was going to end it. I had worked 3 jobs just to buy formula and keep the heat on. It was never enough. I opened my eyes and looked at the alpha. He stared down at me. His expression was unreadable. His silver-gray eyes swept over the damp walls, the broken furniture, and finally rested on the small bundle in my arms. Toby shifted. The loud voices had woken him. I braced myself for the crying. Toby always cried when strangers were loud. He was sensitive to anger, but he did not cry this time. He blinked his big, tired eyes and looked up at the tall man looming over us. The alpha stepped closer. His boot crunched on a piece of broken glass. His scent flared, a spike of dominance meant to terrify. I curled my body over my son. But the cedar scent was not just aggressive. Deep beneath the burning air, it was warm, like a hearth fire in the middle of a winter storm. Toby whimpered, not from fear, from curiosity. Before I could tighten my grip, my son pushed against my chest. He wiggled out of my arms with surprising strength. "No," I whispered. My voice cracked. "Toby, stay." He did not listen. His tiny feet hit the floor. He wobbled forward. The men in the room went completely still. They watched in stunned silence as a toddler walked right up to the most dangerous man in the room. Toby stopped at the alpha's heavy boots. He looked up, then he wrapped his tiny arms around the man's leg. "Baba," Toby said. The word dropped into the quiet room like a stone in a pond. The alpha froze. His entire body went rigid. The heavy, suffocating weight of his pheromones stuttered. The angry edges of the burning cedar melted away, leaving only the deep, warm wood. He looked down at the child attached to his leg. He looked like a man who did not understand the language being spoken. "Boss," one of the thugs muttered, his voice full of confusion. The alpha raised a hand to silence him. He did not push Toby away. He just stared. I scrambled forward on my knees. I reached for my son. "I am sorry," I gasped. My hands shook as I touched Toby's back, trying to pull him away without angering the predator in front of us. "He does not know better. He is just sleepy, please." The alpha looked at me. Our eyes met. Something shifted in the air between us. A strain, invisible pull. My chest ached. My Omega instincts, buried deep under layers of fear and suppressants, stirred. A quiet instinct to soothe, to protect. Before either of us could speak, a new sound cut through the noise of the rain outside. The sharp, rhythmic click of heels on the broken linoleum. The thugs parted immediately. They lowered their heads. The alpha tensed. His scent spiked again, but this time it was defensive. A wall going up. A woman stepped into the bedroom. She wore an immaculate tailored coat that did not belong in this part of the city. Her hair was silver, pulled back in a severe style. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, and identical to the alpha's. Madame Elinert. I recognized her face from the news. The ruler of the city's underground. She looked at the broken door, the thugs, and finally at her son. Then, her gaze dropped to me on the floor, and to the child still clinging to his leg. "So," she said. Her voice was smooth and cold. It held no warmth. "This is the family you told me about, Kale. The reason you have been avoiding the Rossi girl. The reason you refused the marriage arrangement." My heart stopped. I stopped breathing. Kale stared at his mother. The silence stretched until it felt fragile enough to break. His jaw tightened. He looked down at Toby. He looked at me, shivering on the damp floor. I saw the calculation in his silver eyes. I saw the moment he made his choice. Kale moved. He reached down and gently detached Toby from his leg. I thought he was going to hand the boy back to me. I reached out, but he did not. He lifted Toby into his arms. The movement was clumsy, but strangely careful. Toby rested his head against Kale's broad shoulder, without a single hesitation. Kale looked at his mother. "Yes," he said. His voice did not waver. "This is my family." The lie hung in the damp air, heavy and impossible. Elinor studied us. Her gaze pierced through me. She saw the mold on the walls. She saw my frayed sweater. She saw the absolute terror in my eyes. She did not look convinced, but she did not call him a liar. "I see," she said quietly. "Pack your things. You are not raising my grandson in this squalor. You will move into the estate tonight." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I had spent years hiding from monsters, and now I was being dragged into the heart of their world. But Kale looked at me. His silver eyes held a silent, intense warning, "Play along." He was telling me to survive. I had no choice. Ryan's debt was real. These men were real. If I denied it, they might kill us both. I gathered my son's few clothes into a worn canvas bag. My hands were numb. I stepped out into the freezing rain and climbed into the back of a black luxury car. I traded one nightmare for an entirely different kind of trap. The engine hummed to life. Kale sat beside me in the dark cabin. Toby was asleep again, nestled against my chest. The car moved smoothly through the wet streets. Kale did not look at me, but his cedar scent filled the small space. It trapped me, yet, as the rain battered the windows, that same scent wrapped around us, strangely keeping the cold out. I closed my eyes. I held my son. I prayed we would survive the morning. The iron gates of the Rossi estate parted like the jaws of a massive beast. We drove through them and left the broken streets of the city far behind. The rain was still falling, but it sounded different here. It hit the tinted windows of the car with a soft, expensive hum. I sat as far away from Kale as the leather seat allowed. Toby was asleep against my chest. His breathing was the only sound I focused on. I did not look at the alpha beside me. I did not need to. His scent filled the space. The cedar was no longer burning. It was a low, steady hum of wood and rain. It was not threatening, but it was impossible to ignore. It demanded space. It demanded awareness. When the car stopped, the doors opened immediately. Men in dark suits held large umbrellas. They did not look at me. They only looked at Kale. "Bring them inside," Madame Elinor ordered from the other car. Her voice sliced through the rain. "Put them in the master suite." Kale stepped out first. He did not offer me his hand, which I was grateful for. If he had touched me, I might have flinched. I climbed out carefully, keeping my worn jacket wrapped tight around Toby. The air outside was freezing, but the moment we stepped through the heavy oak doors of the mansion, a wave of artificial heat washed over me. The foyer was huge. It was made of white marble and dark wood. It looked like a museum. It did not look like a place where a child should laugh or cry. My wet sneakers squeaked against the pristine floor. I felt dirty. I felt completely out of place. Kale led the way up a sweeping staircase. His broad shoulders blocked my view of anything else. We walked down a long corridor lined with closed doors. He stopped at the very end and opened a set of double doors. "Go in," he said softly. I stepped past him. The master suite was larger than my entire apartment. It had a massive bed, heavy blackout curtains, and a stone fireplace. It smelled faintly of him, cedar and cold night air. Kale walked in and closed the doors behind us. The heavy click of the lock sounded like a prison gate shutting. The silence between us was immediate and suffocating. I stood in the center of the room. I held Toby so tightly my arms ached. I waited for the alpha to speak. I waited for him to demand something. I waited for the nightmare to begin. Kale walked over to a small table and poured a glass of water. He drank it slowly, then he turned to face me. His silver eyes were calm, but they missed nothing. "You are shaking," he said. "I am terrified," I answered. The truth slipped out before I could stop it. My voice was a dry whisper. Kale nodded once, as if he respected the honesty. "You have a right to be. You do not know me. You only know the men I employ." He set the glass down. The sound was loud in the quiet room. "But you do not need to be afraid tonight. No one is going to hurt you." I swallowed hard. "Why did you do it? Why did you tell her we are yours?" "Because my mother has been trying to force me into a marriage with a rival family for 3 years," Kale said flatly. His tone held no emotion. It was purely business. "She wants bloodline alliances. I want her to stay out of my life. I told her last month that I already had a mate and a child. It bought me time. I did not expect her to show up tonight to verify it. I looked down at Toby, and my son just happened to call you Baba. Yes, Kale said. The corner of his mouth twitched, just a fraction of an inch. His timing was unexpected. I took a shaky breath. What happens now? Kale crossed his arms. He looked like a statue carved from shadow. Now, we make a deal. You and the boy stay here. You act as my Omega when my mother or my men are around. You do not leave this estate without my permission. You do not contact anyone from your past. And in return, I asked. My Omega instincts bristled at the commands, but my logical mind knew I had no leverage. In return, Kale said, his voice dropping lower, Ryan's debt is erased. You will never see my debt collectors again. You will have a safe place to sleep. You will have food, and no one in this city will ever lay a hand on you or your son. You have my word as an alpha. I stared at him. I wanted to search for a lie in his scent, but there was none. The cedar was steady, grounded. It was the scent of a man who made promises and kept them, even if he killed people to do it. Before I could answer, Toby woke up. He did not wake up gently. He woke up with a sharp, miserable wail. He squirmed in my arms, kicking his little legs. He was wet. He was cold. He was hungry. Panic seized me again. I dropped my canvas bag onto the plush rug. I fell to my knees and tore the zipper open. I had exactly one clean diaper left. I had half a bottle of formula. I had no clean clothes for him. SHH Toby, it is okay. Mama is here, I whispered frantically. My hands were shaking too much to unbutton his damp pajamas. Kale watched me. The powerful Mafia boss stood in the center of his immaculate bedroom, completely paralyzed by a crying toddler. His alpha presence did not know what to do. Violence could not fix this. Intimidation could not quiet a hungry baby. What is wrong with him? Kale asked. His voice was actually tense. He needs to be changed. And he is hungry, I said. I pulled the last diaper out. I only have one left. I do not have enough milk for tomorrow. Kale stared at the single diaper. Then, he turned and walked quickly to the bedside table. He picked up a sleek black phone. He dialed a single number. Matea. Kale barked into the phone. The lethal edge was back in his voice. I need supplies now. I heard a faint, confused voice on the other end. Diapers, Kale commanded. He looked over at me, raising an eyebrow. Size 4, I provided weekly. Size 4, Kale repeated into the phone. Formula. The expensive kind. Baby clothes, wet wipes, blankets. Get everything. Empty the damn store if you have to. The voice on the other end squeaked. If you are not back in 20 minutes, I will break your legs. Kale finished, and hung up. He looked back at me. I was staring at him with my mouth slightly open. The image of his heavily armed thugs running through a 24-hour supermarket with shopping carts full of baby wipes was absurd. A small, hysterical laugh died in my throat. Thank you, I murmured. Fix him, Kale said, gesturing awkwardly toward Toby. I changed Toby as quickly as I could on the floor. I did not dare put his wet clothes on the silk bedsheets. Toby was still crying, rubbing his fists into his eyes. I pulled out the half-empty bottle of formula. It was cold. I need warm water, I said. Kale pointed to the bathroom. There is a sink in there. I hurried in, ran the hot water, and warmed the plastic bottle. When I came back out, Toby was sitting on the rug, crying loudly. Kale was squatting a few feet away from him. The alpha looked like he was trying to defuse a bomb. He is loud, Kale observed. He is tired, I corrected. I sat on the floor and pulled Toby into my lap. I offered him the bottle. Toby latched on eagerly. The crying stopped. The room fell into a heavy, exhausted silence. The only sound was the soft, rhythmic swallowing of my son. I leaned back against the edge of the bed. My whole body ached. The suppressants I had taken hours ago were wearing off. I could feel the faint, sweet scent of my own pheromones, like warm milkweed and dried sunlight, starting to leak through. I tried to suppress it naturally, pulling my senses inward, but I was too tired. Kale noticed. His head tilted slightly. His silver eyes darkened. He inhaled a slow, deliberate breath. My heart skipped a beat. I waited for the aggressive push of an alpha asserting dominance over an unbonded omega. I waited for the heavy, suffocating demand. It did not come. Instead, the scent of cedar shifted. It poured over the room like a thick, warm blanket. It wrapped around the edges of my sweet scent, not crushing it, but shielding it. It was protective. It was the purest, most instinctive response an alpha could offer to an exhausted omega and a feeding pup. My breath hitched. I looked at him. Kale was still watching us. His expression was guarded, but his scent betrayed him. He was trying to soothe us. Toby's eyes fluttered shut. His little hands relaxed, one of them falling open against my arm. He was asleep before he even finished the bottle. A sharp knock at the door broke the spell. Kale stood up instantly. The warm cedar vanished, replaced by the cold, sharp scent of warning. He opened the door a crack. A hulking man with a scar across his cheek stood in the hallway. He was holding 3 massive pastel-colored bags filled with baby supplies. He looked incredibly embarrassed. "Here, boss," the man grunted. Kale took the bags. "Do not speak of this to the others, Mateo." "Never, boss." Kale closed the door and locked it. He carried the bags over and dropped them gently on the floor near me. There were enough diapers to last a month. There were plush toys, organic formula, and tiny socks. "He has what he needs," Kale said quietly. I pulled a soft blue blanket from the bag and wrapped it around Toby. "Yes, he does." Kale walked to the heavy armchair near the fireplace and sat down. He did not look at the bed. "Take the bed. You both need to sleep." "Where will you sleep?" I asked softly. "I do not sleep much," Kale replied. He leaned back and closed his eyes. I hesitated, but my body gave out. I climbed into the massive bed, placing Toby carefully in the center. I pulled the heavy duvet over us. The sheets smelled like him, cedar and night air. I lay in the dark, listening to the rain against the glass. I was in a house filled with criminals. I was sleeping in the bed of a mafia boss. I was tied to a fake contract that could get me killed. But as the steady, warm scent of cedar drifted from the armchair and wrapped around the bed, I realized something terrifying. For the first time in 3 years, I was not shivering. 3 weeks passed inside the Rossi estate. The rhythm of our fake life became a strange kind of normal. During the day, when Madame Alina or the guards were present, Kale played his part. He stood close to me. He placed a hand on the small of my back. He called Toby's son in a voice that was smooth and convincing. At night, the act stopped. I took the massive bed. Kale took the armchair. We lived in the same room like 2 ghosts circling each other. We did not talk about Ryan's debt. We did not talk about the men Kale commanded. And we definitely did not talk about the way his cedar scent always thickened, wrapping around Toby and me whenever the night grew too cold. I thought I understood the rules. I thought I knew how to survive this. Then came the night he did not come home. It started raining around dusk. By midnight, the rain had turned into a violent storm. Lightning flashed through the heavy blackout curtains. Thunder shook the thick stone walls of the mansion. Toby woke up screaming. He was terrified of storms. In our old apartment, the thunder always meant the roof might leak or the windows might shatter. I pulled him out of the huge bed and walked the length of the room. I bounced him against my chest. I hummed the only lullaby I knew. "SHH, baby, it is just noise. It cannot hurt you," I whispered. Nothing worked. Toby's face was red. His tiny fists grabbed handfuls of my shirt. His cries grew frantic, breathless. His distress spiked my own omega instincts. My chest tightened. My pheromones leaked out in jagged, anxious bursts. The scent of sour milkweed and panicked sunlight filled the room. I was so exhausted, my vision blurred. I had not slept properly in days. The constant stress of acting like a mafia boss's mate was draining the life out of me. My arms shook as I held my crying son. "Please, Toby, please stop," I begged softly, tears pricking my own eyes. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the heavy double doors of the bedroom burst open. I spun around gasping. Kale stood in the doorway. He looked like a nightmare. His white shirt was torn at the shoulder. The fabric was stained with dark, wet patches blood. It dripped from his knuckles and smeared across his jaw. His silver eyes were completely dilated, swallowed by a terrifying, animalistic black. The air in the room vanished. It was sucked away by a tidal wave of dominant, furious alpha pheromones. It was not the warm cedar I had grown used to. This was the scent of burning forests, of copper and violence. It was the scent of an alpha in a frenzy, returning from a kill, ready to tear apart anything that moved. Toby's screaming stopped. He froze in my arms, terrified by the overwhelming pressure of the predator at the door. My knees gave out. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching my son to my chest. My breath came in short, painful gasps. The pure dominance in Kale's scent triggered every submission instinct in my body. My head bowed. My body trembled violently. Kale stepped into the room. The heavy doors slammed shut behind him. He moved like a predator tracking prey. His boots left wet, dark marks on the pristine rug. He was breathing hard. The frenzy was still riding him. His mind was caught in the violence of whatever turf war he had just survived. He stopped a few feet away from us. He looked down. I squeezed my eyes shut. I wrapped my body entirely over Toby. "Do not look at him," my instincts screamed. "Do not challenge him." "Silas," Kale growled. The sound was not human. It was a low, vibrating rumble that shook the floorboards. I could not speak. The sour scent of my panic was thick in the air, clashing wildly with his bloodlust. Toby whimpered against my collarbone, a tiny, helpless sound. That small sound cut through the room. Kale froze. I heard a sharp intake of breath. The heavy, crushing pressure of his pheromones stuttered. I opened my eyes just a fraction. Kale was staring at his own bloody hands. His chest heaved. He looked from his hands to the terrified Omega shivering on the floor. I watched the battle happen in his eyes, the raw, violent beast fighting the conscious man. He squeezed his eyes shut. His jaw locked so tight I thought his teeth might shatter. He let out a ragged, agonizing breath. "No," Kale choked out, "not here." He turned his back to us. He gripped the edge of the heavy wooden dresser. His knuckles turned white. He stood there, fighting a war inside his own mind, desperately trying to pull back the terrifying aura he had dragged into the room. "I am sorry," he breathed. His voice was strained hoarse. "I am sorry." He stripped off the ruined, bloody shirt and threw it into the far corner. He wiped the blood from his face with a towel. He did not look at us. He was too ashamed. He was trying to protect us from himself. Slowly, agonizingly, the burning forest scent began to recede. It did not vanish completely, but the violence drained out of it. What replaced it was a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. Kale leaned heavily against the dresser. He looked defeated. I realized then what he had just done. An alpha in a frenzy did not just stop. It took hours, sometimes days, or the presence of a bonded mate to calm them. But Kale had forced it back purely through willpower. He had crushed his own instincts because they were scaring my son. He was bleeding. He was exhausted. And he was trying to keep us safe. The walls I had built around my heart cracked. I did not think. I just moved. I stood up. Toby was still clinging to me, but his fear had faded into a sleepy whimper. I walked across the room. My bare feet made no sound on the rug. Kale stiffened when I approached, but he did not turn around. "Stay back, Silas." "I am not completely." I ignored him. I stopped right behind him. I closed my eyes and let go. I stopped fighting my own instincts. I stopped pulling my scent inward. I let the suppressants fail completely. I pushed my pheromones out, letting the scent of warm milkweed and sweet, dried sunlight flood the space between us. I made the scent as soft as calming, and as pure as I could. It was the ultimate offering of an Omega: comfort, healing, peace. Kale gasped. His broad back arched slightly, as if the scent was a physical touch. I reached out with one trembling hand. I placed my palm flat against his bare, scarred back. His skin was burning hot. "It is okay," I whispered. My voice was surprisingly steady. "You are home. We are safe." Kale turned around slowly. His silver eyes were wide, the black dilation gone. He looked at my hand on his chest, then down at Toby, and finally at my face. He looked completely undone. He did not touch me. He was too afraid he would break the fragility of the moment. But he leaned forward, just an inch, dipping his head into the space where my scent was strongest. He inhaled deeply, a shuddering breath that seemed to pull the last of the violence out of his lungs. "Silas," he murmured. It was a plea. Toby, sensing the shift in the air, turned his head. He looked at Kale's bruised face. The toddler reached out a chubby hand and patted Kale's solid chest. "Baba," Toby mumbled sleepily. Kale's eyes closed, a single, silent tear slipped down his cheek, cutting through the smear of dirt and blood. He raised his arms, slow and hesitant. He wrapped them around both of us. He did not pull us tight. He just held us, enclosing us in the warmth of his body. The scent of cedar returned, but it was incredibly soft now, a quiet, protective hum. We stood there in the middle of the room as the storm raged outside. I rested my cheek against his bare chest. I listened to the steady, powerful beat of his heart. I was not acting anymore. The contract did not matter in this moment. I was an Omega comforting my Alpha, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, undeniably safe. The morning after the storm changed the unspoken rules of our shared room. Kale no longer slept in the heavy armchair. He took the right side of the massive bed. He kept a careful distance, leaving a wide expanse of silk sheets between us, but his presence was undeniable. The deep, steady scent of cedar became the anchor I woke up to every day. For 2 weeks, the illusion of safety felt terrifyingly real. Toby thrived. He stopped flinching at loud noises. He followed Kale around the private quarters whenever the Alpha was home, his small hands reaching up to grasp Kale's dark trousers. And Kale, the ruthless head of a criminal syndicate, would stop whatever he was doing. He would lift my son, his silver eyes softening in a way that made my breath catch. I started to forget the contract. I started to believe we belonged there. But peace is a fragile thing for people like me. It is usually just the quiet before the trap snaps shut. The shift happened gradually. I noticed it first in the guards. Their patrols doubled. Matea, Kale's second-in-command, looked constantly on edge. Then, I noticed it in Kale. He started coming home much later. When he walked into the bedroom, the cedar scent was tight, laced with a sharp, metallic tang of stress and suppressed anger. He would look at Toby and me with a fierce, burning protectiveness that bordered on desperation. He was hiding something. He was fighting a war he refused to bring into our room. I found out what it was on a Tuesday night. It was past midnight. The mansion was deadly silent. Kale had been locked in his first-floor study with Mateo for hours. I could not sleep. My chest felt tight with an inexplicable anxiety. I pulled on a thick sweater over my pajamas, made a pot of chamomile tea in the upstairs kitchenette, and walked down the grand staircase. I only wanted to leave the tray outside his door, a small, silent offering of comfort. The hallway leading to the study was cast in deep shadows. The heavy oak door was not fully closed. A sliver of yellow light spilled onto the marble floor. As I approached, my bare feet making no sound, I heard a voice. It was not Mateo. It was not Kale. The voice was nasal, arrogant, and painfully familiar. My blood turned to ice. My feet rooted to the floor. The tea tray rattled slightly in my trembling hands. I pressed my back against the cold stone wall of the corridor and stopped breathing. Ryan, he was here. The man who had beaten me starved me and left Toby and me in a freezing apartment. You look stressed, Rossi. Ryan's voice sneered through the crack in the door. Not used to having a leash around your neck. Speak carefully, Kale's voice replied. It was not a shout. It was a low, lethal whisper that sent shivers down my spine. The air leaking from the room was thick with crushing, dominant alpha pheromones. Kale was holding back the urge to kill. Or what? Ryan laughed. It was a nervous, desperate sound. You kill me, go ahead. But if I don't check in with my associate by morning, an encrypted file goes straight to your mother. Madame Alina will find out everything. I squeezed my eyes shut. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. She will find out that your precious Omega is a fake. Ryan continued, his voice dripping with malice. A used-up stray I threw out. She will find out you lied to the entire family. What do you think your mother will do to him when she realizes he is the reason you are turning your back on the syndicate's biggest deals? She will erase him. And the brat too. A heavy thud echoed from the room. Someone, Kale, had slammed Ryan against a wall. If you ever speak of my son again, I will tear your tongue out. Kale snarled. He is not your son, Ryan gasped, choking slightly as if a hand were wrapped around his throat. He is mine, and Sila's is mine. I set him up, Rossi. I used his name on the loan documents. I knew your dogs would come for him when I disappeared. I figured they would break him, maybe sell him off to cover the debt. I didn't think you would be stupid enough to fall for him. The tea tray slipped from my hands. I caught it just before it hit the floor, but the porcelain cup rattled loudly against the saucer. The sound was tiny, but in the dead silence of the hall, it was like a gunshot. The voices in the study stopped instantly. I did not wait. I turned and ran. I fled up the stairs as fast as my shaking legs could carry me. I did not look back. My lungs burned. My vision blurred with hot, blinding tears. I burst into the master suite, locked the heavy doors behind me, and collapsed against the wood. I slid down to the floor, pulling my knees to my chest. Ryan had not just abandoned us. He had fed us to the wolves. He had thrown me to a Mafia debt collector, hoping they would destroy me in his place. But Kale had not destroyed me. Kale had saved me. Kale had wrapped us in cedar and warmth. He had stood between us and the world. And because he did that, because he protected a broken Omega and another man's child, he was now being blackmailed. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was the weakness. Kale was the heir to an empire. He was feared. He was untouchable until me. I was the blade Ryan was pressing to Kale's throat. If Madame Alina found out the truth, that I was a fake, that Kale was compromising the syndicate's business to protect me from Ryan's associates, she would not hesitate. She would view Toby and me as parasites infecting her son. She would have us killed, and Kale would lose everything trying to defend us. I looked across the dimly lit room. Toby was sleeping peacefully in the center of the massive bed, clutching one of the plush toys Kale had bought him. He looked so safe. It was an illusion. This room was not a sanctuary. It was a beautiful, gilded cage sitting in the middle of a minefield, and I had brought the detonator right to Kale's front door. My chest heaved. A panic attack tore through me, completely unchecked. My Omega instincts, usually so desperate for an alpha's comfort, turned inward in an act of violent self-preservation. My scent changed. The warm, sweet smell of milkweed and dried sunlight died. It withered in the air, replaced by something dark bitter and entirely broken. The scent of sour ash. The smell of rotting leaves in a freezing rain. It was the scent of an Omega severing a bond before it could fully form. The scent of pure despair. Footsteps pounded down the upstairs hallway, heavy, urgent. Kale. He stopped outside the door. He did not try the handle. He must have smelled the bitter ash seeping under the wood. I heard his breath hitch through the heavy oak. Sila's, Kale called out. His voice was completely stripped of its lethal edge. It was raw, frantic. Sila's, open the door, please. I pressed my hands over my mouth to stifle my sobs. I could not let him see me like this. If I looked into his silver eyes, I would break. I would beg him to save me, and my begging would destroy him. I am fine, I lied. My voice shook violently. I just feel sick. I need a moment. Silas, I know what you heard, Kale pleaded, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. His cedar scent pushed against the door, trying to reach me, trying to wrap around my bitter ash. Do not listen to him. I have it handled. I will not let him touch you. Let me in. I closed my eyes. The cedar felt so warm. I wanted to drown in it. I wanted to open the door and let him hold me until the world burned down around us. But true love, the kind I had learned from holding my son in freezing apartments, was not about being saved. It was about sacrifice. Please, Kale, I whispered, staring at the ceiling as the tears fell. Just leave me alone tonight. There was a long, agonizing silence on the other side of the door. The cedar scent flared with frustration, then slowly, painfully, pulled back. I will be right outside, Kale said softly. I am not leaving you. I stayed on the floor until the sun came up. I watched the pale light creep across the silk sheets where Toby slept. My mind was devastatingly clear. Ryan was right about one thing. I was a stray, but I was a mother too. I could not let Kale lose his life for me. I could not let Madame Alina look at my son as a liability to be erased. There was only one way to neutralize the threat. The blackmail only worked if I was here. The target on Kale's back only existed because he was protecting me. If I vanished, Ryan had no leverage. Kale would be safe. I wiped my face. I stood up on numb legs. I pulled my worn canvas bag from the back of the closet. It was time to run. I zipped the worn canvas bag. The harsh metallic sound scraped against the silence of the room. Kale was not here. He had left before dawn. He took Mateo and half the estate's guards with him. He did not wake me before he left, but his cedar scent still lingered on the pillows, thick with unresolved tension and lethal intent. I knew exactly where he was going. He was going to find Ryan. He was going to wage a war to protect a fake Omega. I could not let him do it. I slung the bag over my shoulder. I picked up Toby, who was still rubbing sleep from his eyes, and walked toward the door. I was going to slip out through the kitchen. I was going to disappear before Kale ruined his life for me. Before my hand could touch the brass handle, a sharp knock echoed through the heavy oak wood. I froze. It was not Kale's knock. Kale's knock was a quiet, hesitant rhythm. This was sharp, precise, and imperative. I opened the door slowly. Two men in immaculate dark suits stood in the hallway. They were not Kale's personal guards. They wore silver pins on their lapels, the mark of the syndicate's inner circle. Silas, the taller one, said. His voice was completely devoid of emotion. Madame Alina requests your presence in the glass conservatory. Now. My blood turned to ice. The word requests was a formality. It was an absolute order. I tightened my grip on Toby. I had no choice. I nodded and followed them down the sweeping staircase, past the grand foyer, and through a long corridor I had never been allowed to enter. The glass conservatory was vast and pale. Rain lashed against the arched glass ceiling, turning the sky into a bruised, weeping gray. Exotic orchids bloomed in neat, controlled rows. The air inside was warm, but it smelled entirely wrong. There was no cedar here. There was only the scent of frozen steel and crushed white lilies. The scent of a dominant, calculating matriarch. Madame Alina sat at a small wrought iron table. She was sipping dark tea from a porcelain cup. She did not look like a mob boss. She looked like a queen holding court. Sit, she said, without looking up. I sat on the edge of the chair opposite her. I kept Toby firmly in my lap. My Omega instinct screamed at me to bare my neck, to submit to the overwhelming pressure in the room. But I forced my chin up. Elena finally set her cup down. Her silver eyes, so much like Kale's, yet entirely missing his hidden warmth, locked onto mine. She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She slid it across the glass table. It was a copy of the loan document, the one with my forged signature, the one Ryan had used to sell me to her debt collectors. My stomach plummeted. The room spun slightly. I have known about the contract since the third day you were here, Elena said. Her voice was smooth, quiet, and absolutely lethal. Did you really think my son could hide an unbonded, terrified stray in my house without my knowledge? I run this city, Silas. Nothing breathes in the shadows without my permission. I could not speak. The bitter, sour scent of my panic began to leak into the air. I let it play out, she continued, folding her hands neatly. Kale is stubborn. He hates the life I built for him. I thought you were just a phase, a rebellion, a stray dog he brought home to spite me. But then, he started missing syndicate meetings. He started moving his personal guard to watch this wing of the house. And last night, she paused. The air grew heavier. Last night, he mobilized my enforcers to hunt down a pathetic rat named Ryan. She said softly, he is risking a delicate truce with the northern families just to silence a blackmailer. Because of you. I swallowed the lump of ash in my throat. I am leaving. I packed my bag. I was leaving before your guards stopped me. Elena tilted her head. She looked at me not with hatred, but with a cold, terrifying pity. Of course you were, she said. Because you actually care for him. That is the tragedy of this situation. She leaned forward. Her sharp lily scent pierced through my panic, demanding my absolute attention. Listen to me carefully, Silas. My son is a king in a world of wolves. He has power, but power requires absolute focus. He cannot afford weaknesses. He cannot afford a heart. She gestured toward Toby, who was staring wide-eyed at the rain hitting the glass. That child is not his blood, but Cale is acting like a father. Do you know what happens to children in our world? They become targets. They become leverage. My breath hitched. I pulled Toby closer to my chest. If you stay, Elena whispered, her words cutting deeper than any knife. Every enemy Cale has will come for you. They will take your son just to watch Cale break. They will torture you to make him surrender his territory. And Cale will let his empire burn to the ground to save you. He will die trying to protect a family that was never truly his. Tears spilled over my eyelashes. They were hot and silent. I could not stop them. She was right. Every single word was a brutal, undeniable truth. I had seen the blood on Cale's hands after the storm. I had seen the frenzy in his eyes. He was built for a violent world, and I was too fragile for it. My presence was not a sanctuary for him. It was a death sentence. I love him, I whispered. It was the first time I had said it out loud. The truth tasted like blood and ash. I love him, and I will not let him die for me. Elena's expression softened, just a fraction. It was the only mercy she offered. Then you know what you must do, she said. She placed a thick white envelope on the table. There is enough cash in here to get you out of the country. New identities. A quiet life. Far away from the blood and the rain. I looked at the envelope. I hated her money. I hated her world. But I needed it to keep Toby safe. I reached out with a trembling hand and took it. You will leave tonight, under the cover of the storm, Elena instructed. My men will drive you to the border. Cale will not be back until morning. Do not leave a trace. I stood up. My legs felt like lead. My heart felt hollowed out, scraped clean of the fleeting joy I had found in this house. Tell him I started, my voice cracking. Tell him I was just fulfilling the contract. Tell him I never cared. Elena looked away. I will tell him what is necessary to ensure he forgets you. The rest of the day was a blur of agonizing waiting. I sat in the master suite. The massive bed looked empty. The fire was unlit. I pulled out a piece of estate stationery and a pen. I stared at the blank paper for an hour. What could I say? How could I explain that breaking his heart was the only way to save his life? I am sorry, I wrote. Ryan was right. I am astray. The debt is paid. The contract is over. Do not look for me. It was the cruelest thing I had ever written. The scent of sour ash and pure heartbreak soaked into the paper. I folded it and left it on his pillow, right where his cedar scent was strongest. At midnight, the storm returned. The rain lashed against the stone walls of the mansion. The 2 guards arrived at my door. I picked up my canvas bag. I wrapped Toby tightly in his blue blanket. I did not look back at the room. If I looked back, I would fall to my knees and stay. I walked out of the mansion. The artificial heat vanished, replaced by the freezing, biting wind of the city. I climbed into the back of a black car. The engine hummed. We drove through the iron gates, leaving the estate behind. I stared out the wet window into the dark. My chest ached with a physical agony that made it hard to breathe. I knew what would happen when the sun came up. Cale would return. He would walk through those heavy oak doors. His hands would be bruised. His knuckles would be bloody. He would have Ryan's silence secured. He would walk into the bedroom, ready to tell me we were finally safe. Ready to drop the act. Ready to ask me to stay for real. But he would only find a cold room. An empty bed. A cruel letter. He would inhale, searching for the scent of milkweed and sunlight. And he would find absolutely nothing. I buried my face in Toby's blanket and wept as the car carried me away from the only home I had ever known. The motel room smelled of bleach, old cigarette smoke, and damp carpet. It was a place for people who wanted to be forgotten. 2 days had passed since I left the Rossi estate. 2 days of endless, freezing rain. The thick white envelope Madame Elena had given me sat untouched on the cheap veneer nightstand. I hated looking at it. It looked like the exact price of my soul. I had only used a few wrinkled bills from my own pocket to buy cheap formula and a box of diapers from a gas station. Down the road, I sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress. My body felt heavy, hollowed out, as if someone had scraped my ribs clean of anything good or warm. My scent was completely dead. The sweet milkweed and sunlight were gone. Even the bitter ash had faded. I smelled like nothing. I felt like nothing. Toby was not handling it well. He refused to eat. He slept fitfully, waking up every hour with a small, confused whimper. He kept looking around the cramped, dingy room, searching for the broad shoulders and the dark, calming presence that used to carry him. "Come here, sweetie," I whispered, reaching out to him. Toby crawled into my lap. He rested his chin against my collarbone. He pointed a chubby finger toward the thin wooden door of the motel room. "Baba," Toby mumbled. His lower lip trembled. My heart shattered all over again. The pain was so sharp it physically robbed me of breath. I squeezed my eyes shut and buried my face in his soft hair. "Baba is not here, Toby," I choked out. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. It is just us now. Like before." But Toby did not understand before. He only understood the safety he had known for the last month. He pushed against my chest, agitated. He did not want me to hum. He did not want to be rocked. He wanted the warm cedar. I set him down on the carpet and wrapped my arms around myself. I stared at the rain sliding down the filthy window pane. I wondered where Kale was. I wondered if he had read my cruel letter. I imagined the betrayal in his silver eyes, the way his jaw would tighten as he realized he had waged a war for an Omega who claimed to never care. Madame Alina would comfort him. She would tell him it was for the best. And eventually, the cedar scent would settle, and he would forget the stray he had brought home. It was the right thing to do. It kept him alive. So why did it feel like I was dying? A low rumble vibrated through the floorboards. It was not thunder. It sounded like the heavy, aggressive engine of a powerful car pulling into the gravel parking lot outside. I did not move. This was a bad part of town. Cars came and went at all hours. But then, the air in the cramped room changed. It happened so fast my lungs actually seized. The smell of bleach and stale smoke was instantly annihilated. It was pushed out by a crushing, suffocating wave of dominant alpha pheromones. It slammed against the thin walls of the motel room like a physical shockwave. Cedar, but it was not the warm, steady cedar of the estate. It was burning, raging, tearing through the atmosphere. It was the scent of pure, unadulterated frenzy. It was the scent of an alpha predator that had lost its mate and was ready to burn the entire city to ashes to find him. My breath caught in my throat. My eyes went wide. The sheer dominance of the scent forced me to my knees on the dirty carpet. My hands shook violently. He found us how? I had left no trail. I had taken a random taxi to the edge of the city limits. But the pheromones bleeding through the gaps in the door were unmistakable. He was here, and he was completely out of control. Toby gasped. Unlike me, Toby did not feel the terrifying pressure of the alpha frenzy. He only smelled the underlying note. He only recognized his father. My son scrambled across the floor on his hands and knees. He reached the thin wooden door and slapped his tiny palms against the peeling paint. "Baba," Toby cried out. His voice was loud, desperate, and completely fearless. "Baba." Heavy footsteps stopped right outside the door. The silence that followed was the most terrifying second of my life. The air pressure dropped. The cedar scent spiked so hard it made my eyes water. "Stand back," I screamed, lunging forward to grab Toby. I was too late. The wooden door exploded inward. The metal lock shattered, sending splinters of wood flying across the room. The door slammed against the interior wall with a deafening crack. Kale stood in the doorway. He looked like he had crawled out of a war zone. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead by the freezing rain. He wore no coat, only a black shirt that was soaked through and torn at the collar. His knuckles were split, bruised dark purple and bleeding freely. But it was his face that made my heart stop. His silver eyes were completely gone, swallowed by the terrifying, dilated black of an alpha in a full rut frenzy. His chest heaved. He was a feral beast operating purely on instinct, tracking the phantom scent of the family that had been ripped away from him. He stepped into the room. The gravel crunched under his heavy boots. I pulled Toby against my chest, shielding him with my own body. I braced myself for the anger. I braced myself for the violence of a Mafia boss who had been humiliated and abandoned. Kale's black eyes locked onto me. He looked at my pale face. He looked at the tears streaming down my cheeks. He looked at Toby, who was reaching out toward him from the safety of my arms. The terrifying, burning scent of the alpha frenzy hit a wall. It did not slowly recede, it snapped. The beast vanished, and the man crashed back into his own body. Kale let out a ragged, agonizing sound, a sound that did not belong to a king of the underworld, but to a man who had been bled dry. His legs gave out. The ruthless, untouchable heir of the Rossi syndicate collapsed onto his knees on the filthy motel carpet. He dropped his head. His broad shoulders shook violently. His hands, covered in blood and bruises, gripped his own wet hair as he struggled to drag air into his lungs. The burning cedar melted, rushing into a desperate, pleading warmth. "You left," Kale choked out. His voice was completely broken. "You left. I forgot the contract. I forgot Madame Alina's threats. I forgot my own fear. I let go of Toby." My son immediately toddled forward and threw his little arms around Kale's neck. Kale gasped, catching the boy, burying his face in Toby's shoulder, holding him with a frantic, trembling desperation. I crawled across the short distance between us. I fell to my knees right in front of him. I had to, I sobbed, my hands hovering over his soaked shoulders, afraid to touch him, afraid I would ruin him further. She told me about Ryan. She told me the syndicates were going to target you because of me. You were going to start a war for a fake Omega Kale. I am your weakness. If I stayed, she would have erased us, and you would have died trying to stop it. Kale's head snapped up. His eyes were silver again. They were blazing with a fierce, undeniable clarity. He reached out and grabbed my wrists, pulling me forward until my chest hit his. You are not my weakness, Silas, he snarled, his voice raw with emotion. You are my absolute reason for breathing. Do you understand me? I do not care about the syndicates. I do not care about my mother's empire. I gave it up. My breath stopped. What? I gave it up, Kale repeated. He moved his hands from my wrists to cup my face. His thumbs wiped away my tears, smearing a faint trace of his blood on my cheeks. When I read your letter, I knew it was a lie. You did not leave because you did not care. You left because she threatened you. So I went to her. I laid my rings on her table. I walked away from the family. Ryan is handled, he is gone. The northern families have their territory. I have nothing left to give them. I stared at him, completely paralyzed. You gave up your entire life for a stray. For my mate, Kale whispered fiercely. For my son. He pulled me into him. His mouth crashed down on mine. It was not a gentle kiss. It was desperate, salty with tears and rain, tasting of blood and absolute devotion. My Omega instincts flared back to life in a blinding rush. The scent of warm milkweed and bright sunlight exploded into the small room, tangling fiercely with his deep, protective cedar. I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him back with everything I had left. I clung to him like a drowning man, holding onto the only solid thing in a raging ocean. When we finally broke apart, we were both gasping for air. Toby was squished between us, babbling happily, his tiny hands patting Kale's wet chest. Kale rested his forehead against mine. His breathing slowed. The terrifying pressure in the room finally dissolved into pure, unshakable safety. Do not ever run from me again, he whispered against my lips. I will tear the world apart to find you every single time. I closed my eyes. The rain battered the tin roof of the cheap motel, but inside, wrapped in the scent of cedar, and the arms of the man who had chosen me over an empire, I finally stopped running. I am not going anywhere. I promised. The rain in this city used to feel like a cage. It used to wash the warmth out of the world and leave only the cold. Now, as I watched the morning drizzle hit the glass of the kitchen window, it just felt like water. 6 months had passed since the night in the motel. 6 months since Kale laid his syndicate rings on his mother's glass table and walked away from an empire. We never went back to the Rossi estate. Madame Alina kept her word. When Kale surrendered his claim to the territory, she let him go. She did not call. She did not send her enforcers. She simply erased him from the ledger of the underworld. For a man who had been raised to rule, it should have been a devastating loss. But as I watched Kale stand by the stove, flipping pancakes in a worn gray t-shirt, he did not look like a king who had lost his crown. He looked like a man who had finally found his kingdom. Our new house was in a quiet suburb miles away from the city center. It had no iron gates. It had no armed guards patrolling the corridors. It had a white wooden porch, a garden that needed weeding, and large windows that let the sunlight pour over the hardwood floors. I leaned against the kitchen counter and wrapped my hands around a warm mug of tea. I breathed in deeply. The scent of the house was perfect. There was no smell of bleach. There was no smell of stale smoke or cold marble. The air was a rich, unbreakable blend of warm cedar, sweet milkweed, and bright sunlight. Our scents had naturally woven together over the last few months, creating a permanent, invisible shield of safety. Toby sat on the rug near the dining table. He was stacking wooden blocks with intense concentration. He was older now, his cheeks fuller, his laughter louder. He did not flinch when the front door opened. He did not cry when it thundered. Baba. Look, Toby cheered, knocking his own tower over with a joyful shriek. Kale turned away from the stove. The lethal, untouchable aura that used to follow him like a shadow was completely gone. His broad shoulders were relaxed. The bruises on his knuckles had faded long ago, leaving only faint, white scars. He smiled. It was a gentle, breathtaking expression that he saved entirely for us. I see it, buddy, Kale said softly. He wiped his hands on a kitchen towel and walked over. He crouched down on the floor and ruffled Toby's hair. You built a very tall tower, good job. Toby giggled and threw himself at Kale's chest, wrapping his small arms around the alpha's neck. Kale caught him easily, burying his face in Toby's hair, inhaling the pure, innocent scent of his son. My chest ached, but it was not from pain. It was from a fullness I still struggled to understand. My Omega instincts hummed with a deep, vibrating contentment. Every time I looked at them, my soul quietly whispered, safe, safe, safe. Kale set Toby back down with the blocks and stood up. He walked over to me. His silver eyes were clear. There were no shadows left in them. No hidden wars. No suppressed violence. He stopped just inches away from me. His cedar scent wrapped around my waist, pulling me in before his hands even touched me. "You are staring," he murmured, his voice a low, warm rumble. "I am just thinking," I whispered back. I reached up and traced the faint scar on his jawline. "I am thinking about how much I love this kitchen." Kale leaned into my touch. He covered my hand with his own. "It is a good kitchen, but it is only good because you are standing in it." He did not let go of my hand. Instead, his grip tightened slightly, the playful, morning ease in his eyes shifted into something deeper. Something profound and incredibly deliberate. His scent thickened, turning richer, heavier with alpha intent. But there was no demand in it. Only a question. Kale reached into the pocket of his jeans with his free hand. He pulled out a small, plain wooden box. My breath caught in my throat. The mug of tea trembled in my hand until I carefully set it down on the counter. I could not look away from the small box. Kale did not drop to one knee. He did not make a grand speech. We had already survived the grand, terrifying gestures. We had survived the dramatic rescues and the tearful confessions. What we needed now was simple. What we needed was real. He opened the box. Inside rested a simple silver band. There were no diamonds. There were no crests of a Mafia family. It was just a ring meant for a man to wear every day. "Silas," Kale said quietly. The gravity in his voice made the whole world slow down. "I have no empire left to offer you. I have no wealth to protect you with. All I have is these 2 hands, this house, and a promise that I will love you until my lungs stop taking in air." Tears, hot and sudden, pooled in my eyes. "I do not want an empire," I choked out, my voice shaking. "I only want you." "Then marry me," Kale whispered, his silver eyes completely bare, completely vulnerable. "Let me be yours officially. Let me be his father in the eyes of the world, just like I am in my heart." I did not hesitate. I did not second-guess the happiness standing in front of me. I nodded, a wet laugh escaping my lips. "Yes, yes, Kale." He let out a shaky breath, as if he had actually been terrified I might say no. He took the silver band and slid it onto my left ring finger. It fit perfectly. It felt cool, solid, and right. I looked down at the ring, then up at his eyes. The bond between us had been forged in fear and rain, but it had survived, yet there was one thing missing. One final step that an Omega and an Alpha took to seal their souls together. I took a step closer, completely erasing the space between us. My chest pressed against his. I reached up and pushed the collar of my sweater to the side. I tilted my head back. I bared my throat. I exposed the sensitive scent gland on the side of my neck. It was the ultimate act of submission, the ultimate act of trust. I was offering him the deepest part of my biology, the core of my identity. "Mark me," I whispered. My voice was breathless, driven by pure instinct. "Make it permanent, Kale, bind us." Kale's entire body went rigid. A sharp gasp left his lips. For an Alpha, being offered an Omega's unblemished neck was intoxicating. The primal instinct to claim to bite surged to the surface. His pupils dilated slightly. The scent of cedar exploded in the kitchen, dominant and possessive, but completely controlled by his overwhelming love. "Silas," he breathed, his hands gripping my hips tight enough to bruise. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," I answered. I ran my fingers into his dark hair, pulling him closer. "Claim me." Kale did not hesitate anymore. He dipped his head. His nose brushed against my scent gland. He inhaled deeply, taking in the purest, most concentrated scent of my milkweed and sunlight. The hot breath sent shivers down my spine. Then, he opened his mouth and bit down. It was a sharp, piercing pain, I gasped, arching my back, my fingers gripping his hair tightly. But the pain lasted only a fraction of a second. It was immediately followed by a massive, overwhelming rush of heat. The bond snapped into place. It was not just physical. It was spiritual. I felt his soul rush into mine. I felt his absolute devotion, his protective rage, his deep, unshakable peace. And he felt mine. He felt my gratitude, my love, my complete trust. Kale slowly pulled his teeth away. He licked the small drop of blood from the puncture wound, soothing the skin with his tongue. He pressed a gentle, lingering kiss over the fresh mark. When he lifted his head, his silver eyes were shining with unshed tears. The scent in the room had permanently changed. We were no longer 2 separate scents mixing in the air. We were one. The cedar was infused with sunlight. The milkweed was rooted in deep earth. We were completely, irreversibly bound. I rested my forehead against his chest, panting softly, letting the overwhelming euphoria of the bond wash over me. Kale wrapped his arms around me, holding me tighter than he ever had before. Later that morning, the rain finally stopped. The clouds broke, letting the late morning sun bathe the world in gold. I stood on the back porch. Toby was running across the grass in his little boots, chasing a yellow butterfly. His laughter rang out, clear and unburdened. He was a child who did not know fear. He was a child who only knew love. I heard the wooden floorboards creak behind me. Cale stepped out onto the porch. He walked up behind me and wrapped his strong arms around my waist. He pulled my back flush against his chest. He rested his chin on my shoulder, right next to the fading red mark on my neck. I leaned back into him. I placed my hands over his scarred ones. "He is fast," Cale murmured, watching Toby run in circles. "He takes after you," I smiled. Cale pressed a kiss to my temple. His scent wrapped around me a warm, heavy blanket of home. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind rustle the leaves. I thought about the dark apartments. I thought about the broken doors and the terrifying nights. I thought about the cruel twist of fate that brought a debt collector into my life, only to give me a savior. Family is not defined by blood. It is not defined by circumstance or by the rules of a dark world. Family is the person who walks into the burning building to find you. It is the person who forces back their own demons so they don't scare your child. It is the person who chooses you every single day over everything else. I opened my eyes and looked out at the sunlight dancing on the wet grass. I had been running for a very long time, but as Cale held me close and Toby ran back toward us with a bright, beaming smile, I knew the truth. We were finally home,